Mary stands alone at the empty tomb, weeping. Peter and John have gone home. Even the sight of two angels where Jesus had lain doesn't seem to faze her. Her grief is visceral. She came to honor his expired body. There is no body. A stranger asks why she weeps, and through her ravaged tears she responds, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him. I will take him away." Mary. That's no stranger. She knows his voice. Rabboni. And off she races to report, "I have seen the Lord." One moment she stood by the tomb in anguish, and moments later, elation. Joy cuts the fog of grief. Sunshine pierces thick clouds with this radiant news. Resurrection reframes Mary Magdalene's and the disciples and all of our understanding of the events of this past week. Death no more the end of his story or of ours. A change of perspective, a new vantage point helps understand. The same stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. That's verse 22 of today's song, sung so beautifully by the choir, and it captures one of life's recurrent themes. That one piece tossed aside turns out to be the most significant and transforms us. Whether you're working on a puzzle, beholding or creating works of art, navigating relationships, that element, least expected to be important, winds up being crucial. Choices made with information available at the time can make much less sense in retrospect. Hindsight instructs how narrow focus can prevent appreciating value right before us. With every passing cycle, we encounter new opportunities to learn from our experience, to notice and attend to God's presence, to listen to those most magnificently marginalized. The same stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Walking with Jesus through Holy Week now, we enjoy the perspective his companions and his critics lacked. We know the one rejected, crucified as a mock king, now reigns, God's Son. He was scorned, condemned, crucified, and he is essential to everyone. That same stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Peter, perhaps more than anyone, presents an example of learning to reframe, to see things from a different perspective. Every time he thinks he understands what Jesus asks of him, Peter stands corrected. His sermon in today's lesson from the Acts of the Apostles highlights another instance much later in the journey. Visions highlighting God's expansiveness have urged Peter to share God's message with all willing to listen, Jews and Gentiles alike. God plays no favorites. Peter a Jewish fisherman, follower of Jesus, and Cornelius, a Gentile Roman army officer. Peter and Cornelius transcend cultural and religious divides to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ for all. God's word is for everyone. I truly understand, Peter says, I truly understand that God shows no partiality, but in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him. Church was never meant to be an insider's club. God's message is for everyone who would listen. Would that the world could come to know this message to be true. Worldly pressures favor divisions, dichotomies, us versus them, in versus out, big versus small, powerful versus weak, young, old, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, rich, poor. Dichotomies show partiality. Difference and division are the language of the world. God shows no partiality. All can receive God's good news. Judgment belongs to God. Rather than seeing difference and division, perceive potential in every person and circumstance. Resurrection invites us to abide in hope, open to the possibility of a new perspective. The more attentive we can be to voices different from our own, the more likely we are to hear what we need to hear. In the words of Taiwanese theologian C.S. Song, to believe in life resurrected from the ruins of human conflict comes from God, who is the power of transformation. To work towards change in the human condition is a calling in response to the vision of God's reign. Resurrection reframes our perspective and reminds us to relinquish certainty about how God will accomplish what God has promised, all while carrying on with our own God-given work. Jesus' companions didn't know how it would all work out. They saw him die, and they grieved. Yet here we find ourselves on Easter morning celebrating Christ's victory over death. Alleluia. Fully inhabiting our suffering, Jesus endured the worst to show us the best. A living example that even in darkest desolation, death never reigns. Even in the direst of circumstances, seeds of redemption sprout. Resurrection rallies to reach beyond grief, for love rising victorious from the grave. That same stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. As Clement of Alexandria said, Christ has turned all our sunsets into dawns. Resurrection teaches hope for new beginnings in the face of endings. Perseverance when darkness appears most powerful. Trust that whether the how has been revealed, the promise remains. Anytime we are tempted to allow death a final word, resurrection reminds us death never speaks last. New life reigns. Resurrection reframes everything. New life is ours here and now. He is risen. Hallelujah.